we spoke about for months was how all of these protests, some of them were not protests, some of them were actual riots that were planned, coordinated riots, that no one was being held accountable under the Eric Adams administration. We showed you night after night, day after day from October 7th, how most of these things were planned shutdowns of critical infrastructure in New York City. And the NYPD made zero effort to lock up the organizers of that event under the direction of Eric Adams, right? We talked about that over and over and over again. And we showed you that these people are being paid. Most of these people are being paid. They're getting funding. And guess who's funding them? We are, the taxpayer. You pay taxes in New York City, you're funding these protests. You're funding the overtime to police these protests. You're funding the lawsuits that will arise from these protests. You're funding the hospital bills that will arise, the damage. You're funding all of it. And Eric Adams allowed it to happen over and over again. So, we've been getting some backlash from the Jewish community this weekend for a video that I posted on Instagram and on my X. And it just shows a breakdown in the structure of New York City. A few days back, we had talked about policing protests, how you cannot let protests turn illegal, how public safety has nothing to do with your own bias or your political leanings. Public safety is about blind justice. That's why Lady Justice is blindfolded with evenly weighted scales in her hand. She's blindfolded because justice should be blind. She has evenly weighted scales because the decision that justice should be made should be based upon evidence. Whatever the evidence shows whether you're guilty or not guilty. You weigh it out. Shouldn't be that the card shouldn't be stacked against you. So we've said it over and over again. We're at protests, whether I agree with your protests or whether I don't. There needs to be clear instruction of what the law is. And any deviation from that, you are now under arrest in order to control the situation, in order to keep situations from getting out of hand. And situations are very fluid and they're very dangerous. Even at events like the Thanksgiving Day Parade or New Year's Eve, there's very easily you could be trampled. Your child could be trampled. An elderly person could be trampled. A disabled person could be trampled. These are very, very dangerous events. You cannot act with outside of the guidelines when you have thousands and thousands of people. When you have situations in high intensity, because often in New York City, anything that happens in the world, anything that happens thousands of miles away across the country is protested about on the streets in New York City, and the NYPD is left to deal with it. So when those tensions are high, those groups need to be separated. Those groups need to have clear instruction. And regardless of the group, and regardless how we feel about them or how this administration aligns with them, it's irrelevant. It's irrelevant. This is America. You have the right to protest. You have the right to free speech. You don't have the right to take over streets. You don't have the right to harass people. You don't have the right to assault people. You don't have the right to take over critical infrastructure. If you do any of those, whether I agree with you or not, you're going to be placed in handcuffs. But that's not what this administration's done. This administration has played politics since October 7th, night in and night out, and have endangered New Yorkers. Now, I don't know the context of this video. I don't know if this girl went to a holy site to protest Jewish people while they were practicing their faith and praying. And if they did, it's horrible. But unfortunately, this is America. You have the right to protest across from anything or anybody. It's horrible, but it is what it is. We've seen often those people that used to show up at funerals and protest, and they were allowed to do that. It was horrible. Right. And doing this is equally horrible. But the NYPD should be there to keep order, to not let these people buy this institution, to let people pray peaceably, to keep them across the street, keep them not from going in the street. Right. So I don't know that this girl was there, and I don't know that she wasn't. All I know is I see an NYPD officer in the group of hundreds of people chasing a woman down the block. This is a very dangerous situation for him. And regardless of his political leanings, regardless of whether he agrees with someone or he doesn't agree with someone, he risks his own life to get this woman to safety and away from people who are throwing stuff at her. You're going to see someone throw a fire extinguisher that I believe hits the cop. You'll see men hit her, and they're chasing her around, yelling things at her. And this is a breakdown in policing. This is a failure in public safety. Again, I don't care why she was there or why she wasn't there. This should not happen in New York City. This officer should not have been placed in this situation. There should have been order had at any of these protests or counter-protests. Whether you're a protester or you're a counter-protester, you should be held to the same standard. So here's the video.
Your dumb voice is going on. This side is going on. You're
So we posted that. What do you think about that?
So this is one of those things where I say, in most cases, context matters. Context matters when it comes to policing, right? We want to know the whole context of a situation. But when it comes to public expression, First Amendment, context doesn't matter. The role of the police department is to maintain public safety, and the context of what they're saying doesn't matter. For the police department, as far as what's being said, should be complete white noise. And that's what we talk about, where we have to remove politics from policing, and policing is supposed to be apolitical. But no longer, politics has played a complete role. So if we just move aside from this actual riot here, and this is a full-out riot, they're completely stalking that woman. That's stalking their victim, and they're stalking her as if she's prey. But if we look at what's been going on with this administration, the response that we saw, I think it was 2 summers ago, when former Chief Madry actually was out at Union Square, and he was getting attacked by gangs of kids at the I forgot the kid's name, a rap star, where they were giving out games. The response of the police department was completely different than we saw the response of the protests in Staten Island to illegal military-age males being housed in Staten Island. If that's where we really started to see politics start to play out in the response of the police department when it comes to protests and riots. So context does not matter. What they're saying should be complete white noise. And the other question we have to ask is, why is that cop all by himself? How do we get to that point? But it shows that the rank and file, the general population of the NYPD, are still doing their job, despite the fact that it's a miserable, it's not a viable environment anymore. Cops are leaving in droves. It's a mass exodus, the staffing crisis. They're hated by the public, hated by the media, mistreated by the Civilian Complaint Review Board, mistreated by their own inept, upper echelon, weak, egotistical maniacs, and yet they still go out there with the blood in their veins to be cops and to keep safety first. This cop was doing everything in his power to try to make sure that woman was safe. Context doesn't matter, but it makes my blood boil to watch videos like that. I feel sorry that cop is in that position, because that could be a disaster. But that is not a protest. That is a full-out riot where they encompass the entire street. The whole street is engulfed with these rioters, and they're completely stalking her. That is stalking. There should have been mass arrest made there. But unfortunately, that cop is by himself. And this is the inept inadequacy of this police department. This, to me, it really should be white noise. It doesn't matter if they're Jewish, they're Palestinians, what they're saying, it doesn't matter. The police department is supposed to keep public safety. That's supposed to be paramount. But how could that be right now when we have John Shell and Kaz Daughtry electioneering for Eric Adams? Everything right now is centered around politics. We used to say things are supposed to be centered around public safety, but now they're centered around politics. Everything's centered around politics, and somehow safety is just a contributing factor towards politics. All these things that we see are contributing factors towards politics. Politics has become paramount, not safety.
I mean, and that's the thing. So, so after posting that video, I received numerous messages that I'm spreading anti-Semitism, I'm spreading hate. I mean, listen, sorry, the video speaks for itself. I said it over and over again. Whether I agree with her or I don't, or she was at the counter protest, it doesn't matter to me. Once you step outside of the boundaries of the law, we no longer have to have this conversation. It looks bad because there's a group of men chasing a single female and a cop down the block, yelling at her, hitting her, and throwing things at her. And I don't care if I agree with you or not. If I'm the mayor in New York City, you're all getting locked up that night. So, and so we had posted that video. A couple of the counter protesters, people that have been in every counter protest, they want to come on the podcast. Said, hey, listen, if you guys want to come on and respectfully debate if this is okay, if this is acceptable in a society, I don't. I personally think Eric Adams has failed you. He's failed the other side as well, because we've said it over and over again that he's allowed these protests to get out of hand, to turn illegal, to turn into riots, and he's allowed shutdowns of critical infrastructure night after night, and he's allowed these protests to get out of hand, and to what we were saying at some point is actually going to lead up to actual terrorism, because there were dry run after dry run watching how the police responded, and he's been completely inept. So if you're super mad about that video, you should be really mad at the NYPD leadership and at New York City Mayor Eric Adams for buying on to this protest settlement agreement, which allows these protests to get out of hand and really calls in the units that they need only after the situation's already out of hand, which happens every night. So you have to wait for the situation to get bought, to devolve into insanity before the proper response could be had. So this is Eric Adams' fault. Again, I don't care what the scenario is. Public safety does not matter what our personal biases are, what our political standings are. The law is the law, and it should be held that way. Unfortunately, that line has been blurred. And Donald Trump, honestly, by dropping charges on Eric Adams, blurred that line even more. What is right? What is wrong? What is legal? What is not legal? The Justice Department I'm seeing, the New York City that I'm seeing, justice is not blind. Lady Justice has that blindfold removed, and she's looking at political talk.
John, let's just play a game here and say, for instance, let's imagine you were back in the NYPD, you're working. That cop is you, John. Let's pretend that cop is you, or maybe that cop is me. But you know what? Let's use you for this case. Let's say that cop is you. And forget about context, because context isn't important. But let's say those people running down the street are all in favor of making sure that New York City workers don't have to make a choice on taking a vaccine or not. And that one woman is against anyone that doesn't get the vaccine. What are you doing, John? What's your job?
I'm running the same way what that guy is doing. I'm protecting her. I'm calling for help, and I'm getting her out of there. Because my ultimate responsibility is to preserve life. That's my ultimate responsibility. It doesn't matter my political leanings. It doesn't matter my biases. It doesn't matter if that person is protesting or pushing hate against me and my own family. It doesn't matter if that was an anti-police protest. That and FYI, I don't know who that cop was, but that cop deserves a promotion. That is heroic. That dude is a hero, in my opinion. You know, that guy, you seen how he was shoving people out of the way? He was preserving and he protected life. He stopped. And you know, unfortunately, growing up in New York City, we've seen how mobs could act. We've seen how situations could devolve like that. People that are normally civil people will follow the lead of others, and you see there was a high tension situation. Shout out to that cop. That cop is every cop. That cop is exactly what New York City needs. That's the type of leadership that New York City needs.
Well, that's my point, right? The point is that you have to put, when it comes to speech, context doesn't matter. It's not your job to listen to what they're saying and to make any importance on it. Your job is to get that person to safety. And if that person is in complete opposition to your views, but their safety is at risk, that's our mission. Our mission first is to keep people safe. That is the ultimate mission of the police department. There's no doubt about it. And he did his job. I'm proud of him. I have a lot of questions of why he was by himself, why he was completely abandoned, if any, or did he do it upon himself? Did he get himself into that situation? Either way, it doesn't matter. He did his job. He protected her, and he stood strong. That's a cop we would all love to work with. He stood strong. He was shoving people out of the way. He had a sense of presence. Outstanding. If you're watching this, brother, any of your friends, thank you for what you did. That's good police work right there, brother.
Yeah, absolutely, dude. It's that was, that's the thing. So obviously Eric Adams and Daughtry and Shell are so focused on the post and how viral they go. So obviously after we share the video, it goes viral, right? And then there's a lot of, all the crazies come out, everybody wants to kill each other. Why this is happening in America, I don't know. Planes fly every day out overseas. You guys could all go there, kill each other. It doesn't matter to me. This is America. I'm America first. I'm New York City first. I'm talking about New York City law. I'm talking about public safety. I'm talking about New Yorkers and tourists and families' ability to walk down the street, go to school in peace, work in peace. That's what I care about. I don't care about an overseas conflict. Doesn't matter to me. I don't know enough about it to care about it. You guys should all go over there, right? So, but whatever. This war happens online now. So Eric Adams puts out this statement. The NYPD is investigating a series of incidents stemming from clashing protests on Thursdays that began when a group of anti-Israeli protesters surrounded Chabad Lubavitch World Headquarters, a Jewish house of worship in Brooklyn. Now, just right on that, why was anyone able to surround these headquarters? That's number one public safety failure on Eric Adams. This is happening night in and night out. There is no house of worship. I don't care if you're a Buddhist. I don't care if you're a Muslim. I don't care if you're a Catholic. I don't care if you're a Jew. You should be allowed to worship in peace. I don't understand. You're putting all these stupid Q teams and all this other stuff, but you can't keep people safe on the train, and you can't keep people safe while you're protesting. And for years, I would show up to Easter Mass, even though Easter Mass across the world, churches are being bombed and Christians are being killed, and I can't even sit in Easter Mass. I'm standing outside, no cop car outside. Why is this being allowed in New York City? Why did that even happen? That, in my opinion, right there should have never been any other response other than everyone who took over that and surrounded that and caused that. That's illegal. We're no longer protesting. Why was that allowed to happen? What do you think about that, Eric? Should that ever happen in New York City, where your house of worship is surrounded? And if it is, should all those people be arrested?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's something we have to give credit to prior administrations, especially under Ray Kelly. We always protected soft targets, right? And those soft targets were places of worship. And even then, back then, where we didn't have the protests and riots right now with the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, there was always a presence at synagogues, temples, churches, or any soft targets that were maybe, special holidays, things like that. We always had, even the precincts, we had, they called if you remember, John, back in the day, it was called the Hal Auto, right? House of Worship. And there was actually specific cars in precincts assigned to these soft targets to check on them and make sure that they were in good condition. Back when we had, it was called the, critical response? When you would actually, a mobile response, I forgot the name for it, but you'd actually get assigned to Manhattan. We pretty much drive around in caravans all day, but cops would be posted at different times throughout the day before they're caravanning or during the time that they're caravanning to stand at different places of worship. So these are soft targets that have to be planned, and there has to be a tactical plan for them. And that's what we did. In this administration, we don't see that, especially with the height of these riots and these protests on a daily basis in and out since October 7th. We don't see this police department protecting soft targets. And for one, the excuse might be, well, we don't have manpower, but there's no plan. There's no plan within this police department and how they approach these things.
So what's going to be said in defense of this is we don't have the manpower. And yes, is the New York City Police Department diminished? Yes. Did Eric Adams hold true to his campaign promises of lowering the headcount in the NYPD? Yes, he did. He did. Promises made, promises kept. Good job supporting him, police unions. You guys are great. Keep up with friends like you. Who needs enemies, right? Anyway, so yes, they are diminished. But to sit there and say we don't have the resources is a complete and utter lie, because failing to put the proper resources there what lets a situation devolve into complete chaos. And now the response that you have to have, knowing that this protest was going to happen, knowing what was going to happen, and not planning it ahead of time and keeping the protesters across the street, because you could do that. It's a safety issue. You could say, yeah, you could protest across the street. You're not blocking here. Churchgoers are going. It's a big crowd. It's too small of a block. You could do that. First Amendment, yes, but I could restrict your rights for safety. You could do it over there. You could do it 20, 30 feet away. You could do it across Ocean Parkway. You don't have to do it right here. I'm not stopping you from protest. I'm stopping you from getting into a war and someone getting killed here tonight. So they could absolutely do that. And if they would have staffed it properly originally and had plans in place, like a competent police department, like a police department that myself and you were trained in, that we worked for over almost 2 decades, if there was a police department like that, you wouldn't need the response that happened because everything would have been under control. So instead of, let's say, restaffing it at 1/3 of the manpower than what you needed to have to actually clear the streets, and when you watch that position come into utter chaos, and people are like, oh, well, she's not innocent. Okay, maybe she's not. Then she should have been arrested. She shouldn't have been in the position where she's running down the block with 100 people chasing her. So let's see what else Eric Adams admits in this. Initial reports, talking again about our Twitter, because this is how he manages New York City, is by watching guys that no longer live in New York City and are critical of his administration. This is how he manages. Initial reports indicate that one female protester was isolated from her group, harassed by counter-protesters, and suffered injuries. In another incident, a second woman was surrounded and subject to vile, threatening counter-protesters. While one arrest was made and several summonses issued, we are actively working to identify additional individuals involved in these specific incidents. We urge anyone with information to contact the NYPD immediately. We also ask the women who were assaulted to come forward, as we have been unable to locate them so far. I commend the NYPD officers who handled this dangerous situation with professionalism and restraint. Let me be clear, none of this is acceptable. In fact, it's despicable. New York peacefully protests, but we will not tolerate violence, trespassing, menacing, or threatening. Hate has no place in our city, and those responsible will be held accountable. That's a nice word, and I would have wrote it too as a mayor, but the difference is he's been saying this for years now, and it's just not true. In fact, it's the exact opposite on New York City streets. So, I'm looking forward to having those discussions. And honestly, I'd love to even go and bring the gap between both of these communities, because that's what needs to be done. And Eric Adams has failed to do that. Yes, he's brought in the money in both of those communities. He's brought in those people with the political clout in both of those communities, but he hasn't got to the actual rank and file of those communities, the actual people that make those protests happen and make the wheels spin, and actually had them sit down. Listen, this is America. You're allowed to protest. You're not allowed to have a war in our streets. You're not allowed to start beating each other and making our streets unsafe. And that's exactly what Eric Adams allowed. So if you're going to be mad at anybody for anything, it ultimately is held accountable on Eric Adams. He's a complete failure. He's completely incompetent at his position. His core mission is to preserve life in New York City and to make the wheels turn. And the wheels are doing anything but turning, and he's doing a damn terrible job at protecting life in the city.
You've just watched a clip from our live episode. Click the description to watch the full episode.
Like, share, and subscribe for more videos just like this.